this episode of The Cold Hard Truth, I'm gonna be addressing a couple of recurring messages that I've been receiving primarily through Kick Messenger. If you'd like to message me yourself, feel free to take down my Kick username below, and you can message me anytime. Lately I've seen a couple of recurring messages along the same lines of like, what should I do? Should I go active duty or reserves? Should I go infantry or choose a support job? Or what can I do to, something along the lines of what can I do to make the enlistment process easier? So I'm going to address it here for all to see, so hopefully, people will be able to see this rather than asking the same thing over and over. In addition to my own advice that I'll be offering, I have gotten a buddy who I will refer to as Staff Sergeant Victor to speak on the subject in his experience. Staff Sergeant Victor is a Ranger qualified 25 series MOS guy, and he has been deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan, although the Afghanistan deployment was less than 60 days. So let me start off with the first question, which for some reason I seem to get most, is what should I do? That is not something that I can tell you what you should do. You need to decide for yourself what is best for your short-term goals and for your long-term goals. I can give you guys a couple of thinking points, but you can't come to me and be like, what should I do? And I would never suggest you ever ask anybody what you should do in the military, because after all, it's going to be your enlistment and it's going to be your time in the military and no one else's. That's what you will be contractually binded to and no one else. So the biggest thing that I can say is, do your own research and make a decision for yourself. The number two thing I've seemed to be getting on a pretty consistent basis is, should I do National Guard or should I do active duty? And there's an infinite amount of reasons to do either or. I'm personally a National Guardsman. I did want to go active duty when I was first enlisting, but I ended up going National Guard, and honestly, I've enjoyed it. And I'm kind of glad I didn't go active duty. Although there are reasons to go active duty in comparison to National Guard and vice versa. I'm not going to get into who's better or who's worse, but like anything else, the law of averages apply here. An average active duty, say infantryman for example, will on average be better trained than the average Army National Guard infantryman. The average Marine Corps platoon of infantry will on average be better than an active duty Army infantry platoon. It's the law of averages, and that's not to say that every Marine is better than every soldier, every active duty person is better than every National Guardsman, or every Coast Guardman just sucks. I mean, there's honestly, I've met people in the Air Force and the Navy who I'd honestly rather go to war with in comparison to some people I know in the Army. And I know anybody who's been deployed will tell you generally that you'll see some really dicked up active duty units and you'll see some really squared away National Guard units. There are a couple things why I like the National Guard in comparison to active duty, and I can't speak on active duty because I am not an active duty person, but in my mind, this is what makes it a little bit unique. In the National Guard, we all have our civilian jobs. So in my unit at any one time, we're all infantrymen, but there might be 10 police officers in my unit and 10 civilian mechanics who do this every day. There might be 10 teachers, and there might be 10 private investigators. So when you bring all of that knowledge together, the police officers might be able to do some individual training on escalation of force and subduing a person, while the mechanics may know a lot more from experience than say someone who's a mechanic in the Army, just because the Army mechanic who's active duty has only learned that skill and trade through the Army. Yeah, he could have been an a mechanic before, but you know, he's not a full-time mechanic. On the same head of the coin, you know, you might come across a National Guard unit that's better than an active duty unit. You know, but like I said, this is the law of averages here. So, you know, don't get it construed. I love active duty guys. I love guys in the Air Force. You know, I love everyone all the way across. You know, but it comes down to the individual. You know, there's plenty of guys in active duty who, you know, say, oh, you're just National Guardsman, blah blah blah. But you know, those are the guys who are barely making tape, or you know, they can't, you know, do a 12-mile ruck to EIB standard, you know, while I can, or you know, other guys in my unit can. So it comes down to the individual. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about National Guard first active, and look up your local units and speak to people in those local units. You know, if you're in Minnesota, nothing against Minnesota because I know nothing about their National Guard, and you want to be an infantryman, you know, it wouldn't be that hard to find someone who's in the Minnesota National Guard as an infantryman and ask what their unit is like. You know, is it good? Is it bad? What's your training like? You know, is it worth it? And, you know, you might come across a really good unit, like the unit I'm in. You know, we do tons of training. You know, even though it's going to be shutting down soon, you know, it's a good unit with a good group of guys. Alright, so another thing, which is probably like the third most common thing I'm asked is, should I do combat arms or should I do support? Again, this is something that I can't tell you, but I will offer a little bit of insight on it. First and foremost, even though I'm an infantryman, I will be the first one to say that there is absolutely nothing wrong with being in a support job. I started as a support job, and then I went into the infantry. And you know, it is two completely different universes in the military. There are a couple simple truths that you need to be aware of. Number one, on average, I'd say like 90% of the time, the infantry is not a career job. Not because it sucks or it's bad or whatever, but you know, the human body can only take so much. You know, especially if you go in an airborne unit, you know, how many jumps you're gonna do, how many, you know, how much you're gonna mess up your knees or your hips or your back until you just can't do it anymore. You know, how many miles are you gonna walk on those boots, you know, with 60, 70, 80 pound rucks, you know, before you just can't do it anymore. You know, I think I read somewhere that every 6 months in an infantry unit is equivalent to like 3.5 years of wear and tear on your body. So bear that in mind. So most of all, if you are going to choose combat arms, I would highly, highly, highly suggest you have a down the line plan. For, you know, what about when you get out of the infantry, or want to do a support job, or, you know, God forbid, if you get deployed and you get injured and get your legs blown off or your arms blown off or whatever, for whatever which reason you have to get out, what are you going to be good for? And you know, that's a big thing, especially in today's day and age. Yeah, it's all fine and dandy to be an infantryman, but you know, just like a civilian who may have done something on the outside who goes to the military, it means nothing to the military. Just like if you have been on 15 deployments and you're Halo qualified and scuba, and you know, you have 300 confirmed kills and whatever, you know, once you get out to the civilian world, it doesn't mean anything to them either. So bear that in mind. So with that said, I'm gonna let Staff Sergeant Victor start speaking, and he is, like I said, currently a 25 series Ranger qualified guy, and he's currently on recruiting duty now. So to answer one of the other questions I've been getting is, you know, what can I do to smooth over the enlistment process? So he'll speak on that from the point of view of a recruiter, so you guys know what are some things that you can do to make the enlistment process easier. So let's have a listen.
How you doing, guys? Singleton asked me to give you guys a little help in regards to joining from the recruiter's perspective, and some common myths that you may hear about or experience over the internet or as you do your research. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out about 10 things that I really want to touch on. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long, because there's really not a whole lot to say. Number one, The biggest myth is that there's a quota for an individual recruiter, and that is just not the case. What we have is we have what we call a mission for the station or the center. So if a mission for that center or station is 7, and we have 10 recruiters in that station or center, then it's between all of us to make that requirement. It's not just one person has to make one person. And to be completely honest with you, I could care less if I make 1, I make 2, I make 0. That's why you're supposed to work at a team, or as a team. Number 2, how can you make it easier on the recruiter? In terms of staying qualified and having all of your documentation, there's really a lot of research that you can do online. Primarily, you want to make sure that you have your social security card, a driver's license or state ID, birth certificate, high school diploma. If you're currently in high school, you don't need a high school diploma. We'll go request your transcripts and high school letter to ensure that you are qualified. Guys, please let your recruiter know about everything. That means if you didn't graduate, don't bullshit them and tell them you have a GED when you don't have a GED. Don't tell them that you graduated from a certain high school when you didn't. High schools are rated in different tiers, which could affect the jobs and the different things that you're able to do within the United States Army. So just make sure you're up front, you bring in all that stuff, and you stay qualified. As you're working through the process, don't go get any speeding tickets, don't go out and get a DUI, don't do anything that's going to stop you from joining the Army, because that's a waste of time for us and it's a waste of time for you. So number 3, the practice test typically does not lie. We don't care that you had a 4.0 in high school or you have a bachelor's degree. We see people fail all the time. Getting through school now is so watered down that you almost have no obligation to learn anything. The only obligation you have is to show up and turn in your work. I have yet to see a kid not graduate high school who turns in all of their work. So please don't cry that you scored a 13 on the EAST, which is the enlisted screening test that we give to everybody who hasn't taken a SASVAB or an ASVAB before. I promise you it's not lying. If I can go back there and spend 10 minutes and not write anything down and score a 79 on a practice test and do everything in my head, and you spent 30 minutes and you wrote down multiple mathematics problems and you scored a 12, that's on you. Apparently you didn't learn anything. So number 4, jobs are not guaranteed. There is no amount of magic that we can sprinkle on anything in order to magically have that job that you want appear. Jobs are guaranteed in the fact that whatever you choose, you will get. We won't change that, but it's not guaranteed to be there. Holding out, this little myth of holding out because the recruiter just doesn't want you to have that job, does not exist. Whoever came up with that literally has no idea of what's going on. The ones that did get the job from holding out probably got lucky that the Department of the Army happened to have school dates that corresponded to that time period. We're not the gatekeepers of jobs. You get to choose what's available and what you qualify for. I promise you that we don't want to stop you from becoming an Army Ranger. We don't want to stop you from being a 31 Bravo military police. We want you to be those things, but we cannot get those jobs for you. Number 5, tell your recruiter everything. Stop going up to MEPS and telling them that you got into a fight when you were 3 years old and saw a counselor. No one cares. Ensure that you don't go up to MEPS and change your story from what you told us because you got scared. All you're doing is getting the recruiter in trouble. No one that we ever know of has ever gotten thrown in jail or received a fine of 10 or 15 or whatever amount of money that they give you, thousands of dollars. No one's ever received it that we know of. So just relax. I promise you that we're not trying to get you in trouble, and I can sure as hell promise you that we don't want to get in trouble. Number 6, most of us hate recruiting, and we are honestly wholeheartedly not lying to you. We want you to join because you want to. We don't get bonuses for you joining. We don't get anything other than more paperwork. So don't make our job any harder than it has to be. Number 7, if you have psychological problems, I will not recruit you. I don't speak for all recruiters, but I do not want you with my brothers and sisters out on the battlefield. I will not even send up a med read for you to get a consult. This is an absolute non-starter for me. I will not, absolutely will not let you join the Army with any sort of psychological issues, because you're going to be that that E1 or E2 that gets into basic training, and you claim that you have PTSD when you've only been in for 3 months and you had a gun fired on the firing line right next to you, and all of a sudden you have nightmares and all you want to do is go hang yourself. Guys, get over it. If you're that weak-minded, you shouldn't be in the Army anyways. Number 8, understand that I do want you to be successful, so please listen to the advice that I'm trying to give you. Don't think that I'm trying to dick you around or tell you my stories that don't mean anything. I promise I'm trying to set you on a path to get promoted. Almost all the stories that I tell anybody that I've ever recruited is for a reason. When I tell you to go get civilian education, it's for a reason. When I tell you if airborne is open, you might want to take it, it's for a reason. It's because those are promotion points, so please pay attention. Number 9, put your best foot forward on training and preparing yourself for basic. We only do training with you on average of 1 day a week. The rest is on you, so don't let laziness stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. That means getting up in the morning before school and going to work out, or working out after school. That means, not using work as an excuse. You just didn't have time, or this or that. I promise you can make time. If we can do it in the Army, you can outside of the Army. And the last thing that I have is number 10. Respect our time that we use to work on you. You don't understand the amount of hours that we spend on you as an applicant. The paperwork, the interview, the travel to and from MEPS testing sites, to your schools for transcripts, letters, talking to your parents, texting, calling, anything else. If I have to get a hold of you on Facebook or anything else, it all adds up to a ridiculous amount of time and work for one person. And like I said before, we don't get paid any bonus money just to put you in. So just understand all this. Make sure that you listen to what your recruiter is telling you. Don't listen to the people outside of the office who say that the Army treats women terribly. Don't ever go there. Don't be, don't join the Army. Don't join the Marines because they treat women terribly. Go join the chair force. Now, I love my brothers and sisters in the Air Force, but honestly, those are for people that don't want to get dirty. If you want to challenge, if you want to do something with your life that you want to be extremely proud of, that you can look back and say, you know what, I put blood, sweat, and tears into it, then the Army might be right for you. But that's all I have, and I wish you guys the best of luck.